good evening, everyone. Come on in. Listen, don't wait. I have a special guest tonight, and I want to make sure that you get what you need. So, if you're online, if you're on YouTube, stop what you're doing. Like, share this with somebody. Facebook, like, share this with somebody. You can start a watch party if you want to. You're on Periscope. Thank you for watching. LinkedIn. This is my first time live with you guys tonight on LinkedIn, so welcome if you're watching. I can't wait to hear from you. The chat is open. Now listen, I always try to bring you good content, and tonight is no different. Now, everybody that eats chicken knows you don't want bland chicken. So tonight I didn't bring you bland chicken. I brought you well-seasoned Lawry's chicken, okay? You're gonna get just what you need. If you know somebody in leadership, you know somebody who's a teacher, you know an administrator, somebody in central office, somebody who just believes in education and is committed to it, tonight is the night that I need you to watch. I need you to share, and I definitely need you to be in the comments. Why? Because you drive the conversation in Teacher Talks. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Don't change the dial. And while you're waiting, remember, make sure that you like, share, and comment with somebody tonight. I'll be right back. All right, everybody, we're not going to waste any more time tonight. Thank you again. If you're watching through whatever social media platform you're tuned in on, whether you're on Facebook, if you are on Periscope, if you're on YouTube, or if you are watching live on LinkedIn, I'm so excited to have you to join me this evening. I am so excited about tonight's show. I've talked about a plethora of things as it relates to education during this pandemic. I've had on teachers, I've had on counselors. We've talked about making safe spaces for young students. We've talked about social emotional stressors. We've talked about cognitive demand. We've talked about a lot. We would talk a little bit about policy and how does that look and how is it going to look in the future as it relates to Title I schools in America. But now we're going to continue to talk about the boots on the ground. Okay, and I'm not talking about UGG boots either. I'm talking about military combat, getting your hands dirty, doing the low down work that needs to be done to change the lives of students in this country. So let me say, as I always say, it is 9 o'clock here on the East Coast. I'm in Georgia. I don't know where you are, but wherever you are, I'm sure it is close to 5 o'clock or after 5 o'clock. So lift your cups up because I hope the children are down because it's time for us to catch up. Now, listen, this is going to be a good show. I'm not going to hold you long. I try to hold you 30 minutes max, and then I'll let you go on and do what you got to do for the rest of the night. It's up to you. You're grown. Make your own decision. But we have a good show. Tonight, I have a special guest. I have someone who is a veteran administrator with over 10 years of administration, over 20 years in the field of education. This person has turned around schools, have improved student achievement, has created long-standing relationships to support students to do what it is they want to do in their life. And so without any further ado, I'm going to welcome tonight's guest. Her name, remember this name, people. I'm going to say it slow. Her name is Dr. Shandrina Griffin-Stewart. Put your hands together wherever you are. Put your hands together right now. Welcome, Dr. Griffin-Stewart.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. It's so exciting to be here with you all this evening. I'm excited and honored to be here this evening. I really am.
I am so excited. I am looking forward to this conversation almost selfishly. Okay. So just know that you all are watching, but you're really watching me have just a good conversation with somebody that I truly admire. And I think you're truly going to enjoy. Now, we're going to talk about leadership. For those of you that are in leadership, this is going to be a great show for you. Those of you that aspire to be leaders, this is a great show for you. Those who interact with leaders, this is a great show for you. So guess what? This show is for everybody.
That's right.
That's what I just said. This is for everybody. We're going to cover things that you want to hear about, that you want to be informed about, because there are three things we do on this show. Remember, we love, we laugh, and we learn. And so tonight we're going to do all three, because I don't know any other way to do it, right? That's the trifecta of life: living, learning, and laughing. So, Dr. Griffin-Stewart, if you don't mind, tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Just a little bit about me. This is my 25th year in education, and I've had an opportunity to work on all levels: elementary, middle, and high. I started as a middle school teacher at an inner city middle school, teaching language arts. And so my first couple of years, the students taught me a lot, but it was a great experience. And then I was a high school teacher for a couple of years, ninth through 11th grade literature. And then I became an administrator really young. I received my first assistant principal's assignment when I was 29 years old. And so I was an assistant principal for 7 years. And or maybe six or seven. I became an elementary school principal for about 9 years. And I moved to the middle school level for 3 years. And so it's been exciting to work with elementary school students, because I got a good chance to see how students learn, how they learn phonics, how they learn to read, how they learn to write. And so now that I'm back in the middle school setting, it's just great to transfer what I've learned being an elementary principal. Um, el- I love being an educator, because even though being a leader is rewarding and can be challenging, if you always keep the focus on students and teachers, you still will have a love and a passion for leading, whether it's being an assistant principal, a principal, whether you're an instructional coach, and most important, teacher leaders. Teacher leadership for me is critical, and it's most important. And just developing new teachers that's what I live for. I love new and returning teachers. I love building relationships. And I can't let this night go by without sharing that I'm a proud mother to a 17-year-old. He's in the 11th grade. His name is Justin Stewart, and he's a unique young man with great promise.
And let's just say, y'all, she just gave you a little dose of who she is. There is so much to this dynamic, complex individual. We don't have enough time to really go through it all. But just know she is accomplished. Look at her. I mean, look, she did not come to you all playing. Okay? You're looking at distinction, elegance, character, value. But most of all, you're looking at a woman of achievement. Proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I have to say that because I know some of your sorors are watching. They want to they want to get that shout out.
Absolutely.
So let's dive right in. So you guys have heard she has covered all levels: elementary, middle school, high school. I met her at the high school level, actually as my assistant principal, my first assignment as a teacher. And so we connected that first year. Why? Because she was so dynamic. She stood out above the rest. She led by example and she led with character. And I really admired that. And she has been somebody I've looked up to and I've stayed connected with um, over 15 years. Um,
Wow.
I know, right? It's a long
Wow.
time.
When I met you, Justin was one. And
Justin, her son was a 1 year old, a sweet 1 year old too. Good kid, lovely young man. He's grown to be an awesome young man. I can't wait to see what the future holds for him.
that's
So we're going to start you guys with the interview. We're going to just go in and have this natural conversation. Remember, if you are online right now, no matter what platform you're using, get in the chat. Let me know that you're here. You guys haven't told me good evening. First of all, that's disrespectful. You came to my house and you didn't say hello. So I need for you to say good evening to me. I will give you a shout out. And then as we're talking, you have questions or comments, feel free to get in the chat. We're once again on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Periscope. So I'm on 4 platforms, and so I'm going to be hovering through all of those platforms and making sure I look out for what you have to say or what you need to know. So, Dr. Griffin-Stewart, first question. Tell the viewers a little bit about what you've learned over your career as an administrator.
God, I've learned so much as an administrator, but I think the greatest lesson that I would say that I've learned is you can't be a leader alone. You can't make the decisions alone.
Yeah.
You must think a team approach. And if you have team members, it is your job as the leader to develop them, because that's the next level of your work as a leader, is developing the teacher leaders as well as your assistant principals as well as your instructional coaches, teaching them how to lead. Because the sign of a successful school is when you can come into a room in a meeting with your core team or with teachers and you can't tell who the leader is. You can't
Wow.
tell who the principal is. You can't tell who the APs are, but you can tell, like, gosh, you have a bunch of teachers, because your teachers, as you took my words, are boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And so those teachers are the ones doing the work. And so as a leader, I always listen to my teachers and I always listen to my students, because they're in those classrooms. We create the conditions for learning as
Mhm.
administrators. We make sure that teachers have resources. We make sure that they are able to access those pacing guides. They're able to work collaboratively together. But the bottom line is, as an administrator, I am not in the room. The instructional coaches are not in the room. You need your teacher leaders to be there. And the
Mhm.
only way you can grow and develop teachers is first build their confidence. That's the first thing.
Mhm.
And you have to let teachers know it's okay to make a mistake. We're not looking for perfection, but you got to help teachers to continue to develop that growth mindset. Because if you think back, Dr. Holmes, when you were a first year teacher, to when you continue and you became that 10th year teacher, you had someone there helping you grow.
Yeah.
And so I look at my whole staff that way daily. My staff members, whether it is teachers, support staff members, parapros, the school, that's my classroom.
Yeah.
And so all my teachers and support staff members, even the secretary, I learned a lot about them. What is their strengths? What are those areas that we can harm and improve? But I look for those opportunities for leadership at all levels, and it's all hands on deck. It's no I in team. And so I model that with teachers. I
Mhm.
model that with support staff members. If you come to Appleton Middle School, I can say that all staff members feel valued, respected, and know that I respect what they bring to the table.
Mm. Oh my! Listen, I can't even type in the chat fast enough because you are dropping so many nuggets at one time that I want to make sure that I capture this for those who go back and watch it at a later time. They can see and follow the conversation. So before we continue, let me go ahead and give my shots out. Dr. Kim West, thank you. I see you. Hopefully you can watch me on YouTube
Hey, Dr.
now.
Kim.
Miss Patterson, she says hello. Thank you for watching. Mrs. Selby, Davy, she says, hey, thank you for watching. Minister Holmes, thank you for watching. Miss Jackson is in the house. She says, good evening, doctor. Good evening, Miss Jackson. Um, Excellent leader, Miss Patterson says an excellent leader. So you guys are in for a treat, is what she's saying. So some of those notes, you said leaders grow leaders.
Absolutely.
Leaders grow leaders. We had another comment. Miss Jackson says, we got to be careful with this one. What's going on in the neighborhood, Mr. Rogers? Well, not much. We're just having a conversation, Miss Jackson. We can't wait to hear more from you because we know you're going to bring some interesting comments. Another thing you said was this: leaders learn how to listen and model their expectations with respect.
Absolutely.
Leaders learn how to listen. You don't, listening is not always a given skill. You have to learn how to listen and then model what you want people to do while also respecting them. Powerful. So let me ask you this. So when you get into a leadership position or when you desire to be a leader, what is one thing or a few things that you want future leaders to know that you have to leave at the door? You can't take these things into the position with you because it could sabotage you or ruin you. What should they just drop? Don't take it. You don't need it. It's not going to help you.
When you move into a leadership position, you have to leave your personal biases at the door.
Ooh,
You really have to, because if you don't leave them at the door, you cannot really objectively listen and really consider your audience.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the first thing that I would recommend. And then the second thing to leave out is, if you have a negative experience, let's say with a teacher or with an AP, or just with a parent or even a student,
Hmm.
you got to come back every day with, it's a new day and we can always start over. I always tell children that when I see them, if they are not having a good day, I
Yeah,
tell them all the time, you can always start over,
yeah.
and you can always say you're sorry and admit what you've done. As a leader, I've had to admit over the years some things that I knew I didn't approach the right way.
Hmm.
And sorry went far with teachers as well as parents and students. They need to know that you understand, hey, I'm having a bad day today. Be honest with people.
Yeah.
Make sure you're honest with your team. And so they know how to support you and you know how to support them. Don't hold grudges.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, that's critical, because when you are a new leader, sometimes you can work with veteran teachers who are set in their ways.
Yeah.
But it is still your responsibility as the leader to see what's the best they bring to the team
Hmm.
and cultivate what they bring and let them know, I appreciate what you bring to our team. And
Hmm.
then even if you have to have those hard conversations, because Dr. Holmes will tell you, I've had to have hard conversations with people over the years, with teachers, with parents, with students, but you can have those conversations and you can deliver the message with love and respect. I
Hmm.
had a teacher recently, he's been with me now for 2 years, and he said, Dr. GS, you're not mean, but you mean what you say. And so that was paramount for me, because
Yeah.
I'm not a mean person. But we're gonna teach children, and we're all about closing gaps, and we're all about helping students make growth. Because sometimes the students I serve, they come multiple grade levels behind.
Hmm.
So, with our kids, can you see a diamond in the rough? That's the kind of people I go seeking and looking to recruit. Can you see that diamond in that student you serve? Because I
Hmm.
know, when I think about my personal background, I was one of those kids people kept rubbing till they could see a diamond come up.
Yeah.
And so, we have to build our kids confidence, whether it's inner city, whether it's not. All kids need to know that I value you.
Hmm.
In whatever condition you come, I value you, and I just want you to be the best you. And
Yeah.
so, Dr. Holmes can tell you, I model that with my staff. I'm very understanding, but accountability, it will happen.
Hmm.
And so, while we'll work with you, students are first, and my staff members know, hey, children first, and then it's us.
Yeah.
And so we have to keep that in the forefront. that our
Mhm.
children come from, and if children are first, you will go to collaborative planning and plan with your content like peers. You will let that data drive your instruction.
Mhm.
You will make sure that you are providing that tier one, tier two intervention for students. And
Mhm.
you are going back being a solution seeker saying, what can we do now? Because education, this work is hard. And
Mhm.
it's been even harder during the pandemic. But I tell you, I'm blessed and I'm highly favored because I work with a team of people where they have worked through and they've been very resilient. And so I work with some resilient teachers as well as students. And I'm proud of my parents too. They've been resilient
Mhm.
during this tough time.
So we're definitely going to dive into that conversation, because people are experiencing things as it relates to education we've never experienced before, and that's at all levels, all stakeholders. And so I really want to hear from you and share your experiences, about how you dealt with leadership in a pandemic. But let me back up a little bit before we get into that conversation to say this: where you are now, you did not get here overnight.
No, no
I've
way.
known I've known her for a long time, y'all.
No way.
So this is a progression. So just know when you walk into the role of leadership, you're going to make many mistakes.
Many,
You're going to have failures,
many.
but you have to learn how to grow professionally yourself. Acknowledge your mistakes, own own
Yes,
it,
sir. And
and
you
then
know what, Dr. Holmes, I'm sorry to cut you off,
no, yeah,
but
come on.
it makes me just go back in time because whether you have been an administrator or you're aspiring to be a leader, you're going to make your share of mistakes. But you got to be okay to say to your team, because that's why we have teams at a school to say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not strong in this area. Because I just want to keep it real. When I first started being a principal, I was young. And sometimes when you're young, you don't listen and you can have I know it all. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? Because I had that I know it all attitude, I was sinking fast.
Oh
And
wow.
back then, we used to do surveys. They would give the teachers and the support staff surveys to, give you some feedback. Oh my God, that was the lowest point because when I was looking at the results, what I noticed is my teachers they had a strong dislike for me, but the
Mm.
classified staff, I think they hated me.
Ooh.
so I was looking at the feedback, and I met with the leadership team. I never forget, I met with the leadership team, and I took a copy of my results because they were horrible, and I gave everybody a copy, and I said, okay, I want to give you all 15 minutes to look at the survey results of what staff said, teachers and support staff members. And I said, I really want to get it right. I want to be a good principal. But these results are showing me that I'm not doing what I think I'm doing. So the team started giving me suggestions on what I needed to do to improve. They
Mm.
said, first of all, make sure you get here on time in the morning.
Ah.
Check I checked that off. Because you remember I was young, hey, I'm the principal. And so I checked that off. And then they said, hey, we need you really making sure you walking around speaking to the kids. I mean, you got to really make yourself visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started being visible. And they said, hey, the kids want to see you in the room. The kids want you to come in and not always observe, but just be a part of the teaching and learning.
Yeah.
Start. And you know what? When I made those changes and I modeled the way, and it took time. It wasn't just a week. I modeled that behavior, and that behavior is a routine of mine. If you come to Appleton, I'm walking around, I'm greeting students, I'm talking, trying to see what's going on with them.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm a little bit of everywhere. But when they told me what they needed from me, I made sure I not said it in my words, but I modeled it because it's your actions that count when you're a leader more so than your words. And so, that has been the most rewarding that I've experienced. And then I share my story with other leaders to say, you may be kind of bad in the beginning on some things, but
Yeah.
if you work with your team, they will help you grow. And what I can honestly say, my first principalship, if it wasn't for those great teachers and leaders, I wouldn't be successful right now. They helped me become the leader. They
Yeah.
helped me to learn how to analyze data. They
Hmm.
helped, we worked as a team to say, okay, what are our next steps? What
Hmm.
do we really need to do for our kids one by one to make an impact? And it wasn't what I did that was so great, because
Yeah.
leadership is not about what you do, it's about what we do. What
Wow.
we do together. It's
Wow.
not a me, it's a we.
Oh my Lord. Hold on. I have to type that because somebody needs that. Leadership is what we do. Did somebody receive that? It's leadership is what we do. It's not about the me. It's about the we. Now listen, these comments are on fire. So I'm gonna come share some of these comments with you. I want to remind you that you said one, be a solution seeker. That's what leaders do. And I can hear this voice in my head.
Oh, there go Debbie.
Mr. Noah says, say that, Griffin. Mrs. Davy says, yes, that can be tough. Leadership can be tough. Those conversations can be tough. Ms. Holmes says, hello, Dr. Holmes and Dr. Griffin-Stewart. Mr. Holmes says, LOL, you're not mean, but mean what you say. That was a simple yet powerful statement. And then you said, understand teachers. You need to understand what teachers need from you. Because when you said that, what resonated with me is they're telling you what they need in order to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the leader, you need them to follow, but you need to know in what capacity or what conditions are necessary for them to follow. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to follow. You're going to always have that one that's wanting to do their own thing. And there are ways to handle that person. But we're talking about the collective ship. If you got to lose an oar every now and then, that's okay. You still can keep the ship afloat with the other 30 oars you have to move that boat. And so that one bad oar who wants to go in the wrong direction, they can never overpower the direction that the majority of the ship are driving in. And then you go ahead and give them one of those blow-up boats and send them on somewhere else and say, you know what, go and do great work other places, but just not here. You said leadership is what we do. And Ms. Patterson just posted, she says, you are not just a principal, you are a leadership teachers for your teachers, and you are awesome. And I will echo that. I will definitely echo that. So let's keep going. So you mentioned the pandemic. So let's just talk about that. Describe some of the challenges of leading through a pandemic that you've experienced so far.
Well, that was really a tough experience for me. All of a sudden we left school. It was just all of a sudden. And so I had to first come to terms with, is this really going on? And
Yeah.
so it was rough, because before then I did a lot of technology, but not to the level that I had to move immediately to learn how to do. So it was very stressful. But as a leader, you cannot show your stress, because it's amazing to know your teachers and support staff members will take on your personality.
Wow. Yes.
And so every time the district gave us a new expectations of creating our breakout rooms and creating our teams platform and conducting PL meetings and just conducting PLs as a whole, I just started studying, because I always keep in mind that my classroom, that's my teachers and support staff members,
Yeah.
secretary, the clerk, they're counting on me. And if I don't make this happen, then they're not going to be able to successfully move forward. And so again, leaders, it will always be some tough challenges. And so the technology was tough.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I started looking at my staff members who were strong with technology.
Yeah.
And so, we would get on, and then they would say, hey, Doc, You got to do this. They will walk me through things. So it's all about knowing your staff and knowing their
Mhm.
strengths. So I knew who my technology people were. And then I knew those people who could get us resources. And so we worked as a team. And so March, April, and by the time we hit May, I mean, we had the technology piece. It was, I mean, it's like it's nothing now. You
Yeah.
know? And so that was tough. It was tough helping teachers make the connection with students,
Yeah.
because while we could see students on the screen, it's nothing like them being physically present in the room with you. So we had to work through that. And so what I found us doing is we were reaching out to students on teams. We were making phone calls at home. I mean, just trying to be accessible to students the best
Mhm.
way that we could. And then we also just really had to have a come to Jesus meeting as a staff, because you got to remember, if your paycheck is not affected, sometimes you can forget the others who were affected. And so, just in helping keep everybody understanding that we are still gainfully employed,
Yeah.
we still get a check at the end of the month, we
Mhm.
are still able to pay our bills, we are having students and parents, they are not experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be empathetic to
Mhm.
that. And so we did an activity as a staff that was very beneficial. And it was for the whole staff, not just teachers, but how have our students been impacted? And so we had like a little skit kind of scenario thing where we went to breakout rooms. And so in one breakout room, these students, they've been impacted by COVID by 100%. Tell me, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And then we have students who've been impacted by COVID by 25%. What does that look like for a family and students if you've only been out of 100%, you've only been impacted by 25%?
Yeah.
And so as we started working with children, it's like you got to ask yourself that question. And I have to ask myself that question as I'm talking to a parent. Have they been impacted 100% by COVID? Or if it's just 25%, or is it half and half?
Mhm.
Because you have parents, they're trying to make it.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be very cognizant of their level. And so I
Mhm.
think that helped all of us to understand, if you're trying to just make it, your children doing work might not be top priority. If you stand with grandmama, then you're going to stay with your aunt, and then you and maybe one of your girlfriends, y'all done pool together. Now y'all living together, just
Mhm.
trying to make it.
Yeah.
So, it's all a part of knowing students, because I can't tell you how heartbreaking it is to hear parents crying when you're talking to them. And all I find myself saying is, Mama, listen, you do the best you can, and we're going to do the best we can for you.
Yeah.
But, we've been very, very cognizant about trying to make sure that we're empathetic and understanding. Now, do you have those students who are just not doing anything? Oh, yes, you
Yeah.
do. But you have a good bulk of people, they just trying to make it. So how are we going to help them with their children if they're just trying to make it?
Wow. Let's look at some of these comments because I mean they are having a lot to say. As you're talking, Minister Holmes says that will preach. It's not about the me, but the we. Uh, Doctor Lonnie says this is some good stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Lonnie.
This is some good stuff. Then Holmes comes back. He says, set the example and lead by example. We have to be approachable and visible. Great teaching, sis. These are truly some characteristics of great leadership values. Dr. Lonnie comes back. He says, most new leaders lead from their own learning styles and workplace appreciation languages rather than the learning styles and workplace appreciation language of their staff. Effective communication is what I hear this principle speaking of. And I totally agree. I hear you saying that, a lot of your students, well, not a lot, but there were some who had to put learning on the back burner.
They did.
And what you all had to do was really take stake in their new learning environments because they were no longer with you. And to teach your students probably be a little bit softer and understanding.
Yeah, let
And
me
that,
tell you, it has been a hard year for us, because you're teaching kids, but they have things going on, and you still have to teach those standards.
yeah,
You cannot lose sight of accountability, because it's still happening and it's going to continue. And then you have parents that you're trying to help them work through getting back to the new normal. And then, even like with my feeder high school, which is a great principal there, Steve Jones, they couldn't get to know the ninth graders the way they needed to. So he said, hey, can you come over here? Because a lot of these kids, we just don't know them. And
Yeah.
so he was going through some names. I was like, wait a minute, that's a great student. And so I found myself with him saying, hey, call him on the phone. Call her. And so what we started finding out is they had horrible situations going on. So in the eighth grade, these are students I considered successful. They were on top of it, and so were their parents. It's one young man that comes to my mind. And when I called him, he said, Dr. Griffin-Stewart, I'm just doing the best that I can. And so I pumped my brakes because I was like, what are you doing? I'm gonna make great grades. And when he said that, I could hear the stress in his voice. So what I did, I walked right back over to the school because remember, I know the students, but my teachers know them better than I do. So I
Right.
started going to the eighth grade teacher saying, hey, you all, let's meet. Let's talk about. And so they started saying, hey, doc, his mom lost a job. They were staying at the Salvation Army for a little while. Then I'm talking about these are like some of our best students.
Wow.
And so when I took it back to the high school principal, I said, hey, he said maybe we can do a vertical teaming with eighth and ninth. And it was great when we did it because
Mhm.
those ninth grade teachers were just asking questions of the eighth grade teachers because they know the kids.
Right.
And being a ninth grader, you really don't see them. And we've been going, face to face, and then we'll go back home. They really didn't get a chance initially to know the kids. So we were their segue. In the
Right.
same way for fifth grade that moved to sixth, we started reaching out to the fifth grade teacher. So vertical teaming end up being, a godsend for our zone to be able to reach out and say, hey, can you help me understand this kid? Because I really don't know him.
Yeah. So now you shared a lot of nuggets as it relates to this next question, but I want you to just pinpoint one thing in particular that to kind of really extract what you want people to take away from you. So as you think about your leadership, what is the biggest shift you had to make pre-pandemic to now?
Really being flexible with how students learn.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is there are a lot of frameworks out here now. And we have to be flexible.
Yeah.
We can't just think traditional, come
Hmm.
sit in the room. So I'm very open with that now. Some kids do very well with a blended experience.
Yes.
And then some kids do very well with just a virtual experience. And before then, I never would have thought of that. It's like, okay, let's be flexible in how we think about how we're serving children.
Right.
When we're recording our lessons, that child may not be able to learn right then, but being okay with saying, I've recorded my lesson. Johnny's going to look at my lesson, my opening of the lesson and the work session and closing, at 4 o'clock. But I need him to make sure he posts his assignments in Canvas at X time. So we had to really be flexible in
Hmm.
our thinking with how we teach children. Because even when the pandemic passes, we are birthing a new way for education right now. So we cannot go back to the old way because it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And so any teacher or any leader that's stuck in that, I want to go back to the old way, they're going to find that it's going to be a losing situation for them
Yeah.
because you got to think about progressive and now we're thinking about the future and how it's shaping education.
Mhm. I totally agree. And Ms. Davis says, just listening to the story, it is heartbreaking. And there are several stories all across this nation, for those of you that are watching and listening, of some dire circumstances that teachers are dealing with to try to educate students. And students and teachers as well are having to make some very difficult choices. Um, and it's also challenging, and we'll pick up with a question later about teachers, but it's also a challenge for teachers when you can't help. We know that in some of these circumstances, being under our care for long periods of time during the day was the safest place for many of our students. And now they're at home, sometimes in very risky environments that you are aware of, but there's nothing you can do. And you oftentimes feel helpless, almost selfish sometimes, because your focus is teaching. Like you said, those standards aren't going anywhere. The curriculum is still established, and the expectations is that you teach. But you know, how do I teach to a child that I can't connect with because of what's going on around them? And that's a tough situation. But I like what you said about being flexible. Being flexible for all my parents that are watching, and you're having to work with your children at home. You're not going to get it right every day.
No.
Most days you're going to get it wrong. But give yourself some grace, forgive yourself, be flexible, and get back on the saddle. That's all you can do, because teachers and leaders do it every day. You got to get back on, no matter how many times you fall off. Get back on and ride that horse. The horse is going to buck. It's going to buck, because right now there is this certain amount of resistance, but you have to know you're stronger than the horse, because it's about willpower. And as long as you have a determination to make it work, it's going to work. But you got to be consistent, and you can't give up. And you have to be, as she said, flexible, because that's super, super, super important. Um,
You know what, Dr. Holmes, as well, even with our children, because, working virtually all day without that socialization, that can be tough on children.
yes,
Because you got to think about, they had that opportunity to walk to class. They had the opportunity to go to the lunchroom, to have just that socialization. And yes, they may, be texting each other, or talking on the phone, but it's nothing like that social interaction.
yeah,
And so when you're thinking about children being in one space, whether it's a space in their room, whether it's in the dining room, or wherever that space is, they're trying to work for consecutive hours. That's taxing on children too. So,
mhm,
as parents, we got to extend them some grace too.
yeah,
But, I'm just talking as a mother now. I've had to extend my son grace and say, you know what, but I know it was hard today. And I know it's hard just sitting there. But, we got to keep pushing.
yeah,
And so, as you're pushing yourself, just keep in mind that, children are struggling with, and then they have a lots of work to do. And so, just continue to encourage them to do their best, even if you're frustrated sometimes.
So let's talk about this. I know a lot of districts are now talking about the learning gaps, or what they call the learning loss. Um, what do you see being the biggest way to tackle that for your school?
The biggest way we're going to be able to tackle that for my school is to look at the historical data of students. I know, like right now, students are doing their various assessments, whether it's our unit assessments, whether it's our star assessment already. But we can still look at that. I don't know how reliable that's going to be, but we've got to historically look at children's data from a couple of years, just to
Yeah,
see what their patterns are.
yeah,
And then, as teachers, we've got to look to see what are those focus skills that we need to work on that all children have in common.
yeah,
Because if you look at data, you can see they all have some of the same focus skills, those same essential standards. What do they have in common?
yeah,
That we can create when we think about begin with the end in mind. And then, what are some things that's just unique to them? Like, I love the star report, because you have your class report, and then
mhm,
you also have the student personal instructional report, and it will give you their focus skills. And so that way, when you're looking at those skills as a teacher, you can determine what needs to be taught, how it needs to be taught, of course, using your pacing guide, because that pacing guide is still very important.
yeah,
But we're going to have to look at now two consecutive years. So, for example, sixth grade ELA teachers, they're going to have to look at fifth grade ELA standards along with sixth grade.
right,
Seventh grade teachers are going to have to loop back. And then it's going to take some vertical teaming, because a lot of times you can work with your content like peer, but it's going to take more vertical teaming As like I think about ELA because I was an ELA teacher, but we got to look at it from sixth, seventh, eighth, and even eighth, ninth
Yeah.
to see where students are, and build them a plan that is doable because it's gonna take some time to
Mm-hmm.
close the learning loss. It
Mm-hmm.
is. And so when we get in that mindset that I know I'm gonna have multi levels in my room, and it's all about making your resources work. Nothing takes the place of direct instruction.
Right.
That will never change. But when you're working with kids and you may have some on an eighth grade level, you may have some on a seventh grade level, sixth grade, even fourth grade. Then when you start looking at that student's personal instructional report, you can help them work on grade level, but you can also meet them where they are because we're in a time now, it's all about closing gaps.
Yeah.
And so, as a teacher, and I always share this with my teachers. If you have a student in your room and you're an eighth grade teacher and you're looking at the reports, you're looking at the accelerated reader Lexile scores, and you see fourth grade, as an eighth grade teacher, that's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not in the room, but I know that's overwhelming because I never, as a leader, you can never forget I'm a teacher first,
Right.
then I'm a leader second. And so you have to coach teachers. It's all about gaps now. And so if this child is in fourth grade with you in eighth, because it happens, and I know it's happening all over the world, then how are we closing gaps? And so that's the biggest plan because if he's in fourth, and by the time he leave you, he's at the end of fifth grade last month, tipping on sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot to be proud of as an educator
Yeah.
because that's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Let me highlighting what you said, and this is for all my leaders out there, even my teachers. This is what she said, and I'm going to just kind of ball this up in a summary. Be data driven because you have 2 years of non-reliable data, 1 year of no data, and this year of data that's really not reliable for some people. So look at how students have performed historically and let that drive your plans. But those plans need to be strategic because closing that gap is not going to happen overnight. Work collaboratively, horizontally, and vertically, and come up with a plan that addresses specific needs strategically over time. Think 3 to 5 years, not even 2 to 3, because it's going to take some time. There will be, in some cases, significant learning loss because some of your neediest students were not with you. And that's where your gaps exist with those students. And they didn't have you. They didn't have you. They were at home. And you're trying to serve them distant, virtually. And so be realistic about what you can do within your circle of control, collaboratively as a staff. You, the teachers, the support staff, the parents, and the stakeholders, along with the students. Because the students need to be fully aware of what's going on for them and with them. You can't leave them out of the puzzle. So bring them into the equation because at the end of the day, they're the one doing the work. So that you have to bring them in.
Holmes, don't go at it alone as a staff.
Yeah.
I find myself reaching out more to my middle school colleagues. And so, that's very important because sometimes you all are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so at our last middle school principals meeting, Miss Graham is the principal at Weaver, and she was sharing with us how she's doing some PL trainings this summer for her staff. And I found myself saying, well, hey, my teachers need some of that same thing. Can I split the cost with you? And then the other middle schools started saying, well, hey, let me join in. Just let me know what you're doing because we all have a lot of commonalities. And so, while we're working as an individual school, if we all put our resources together and our talents and our strengths, because collaboration is the key.
Yeah.
But collaborating on the right work is even more important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and just collaborate with your high school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because those eighth graders going to ninth grade, that vertical teaming is going to be critical.
And we hear this word collaboration all the time. And I've been involved in that work. I'm currently involved in that work. And, I see it done well some places, and I've seen it done horribly just for the sake of saying we're collaborating, but it's just a group of people in a room, but individually working separately. That's not collaboration. There's not shared information, especially related to student performance and data. Then what are you really doing besides wasting time and taking up space? And so that's not going to help you. So if you say you've been collaborating for the last 3 years, but you haven't seen any student growth, we got to rethink how we're doing it, because it is the performance of collaboration that makes the difference, and not just simple this this ideal framework that we're trying to follow because it was something that was recommended. And if you don't know, let me say this: if you don't know how to show and model collaboration, get somebody in your building that can help you. Once again, you're not perfect. You don't know everything. There are people out there that can help you to do the work because you can't do it by yourself. There are still people in this chat, Dr. Griffin Stewart. I'm getting people to tell me they need this to be shared so they can share this out with others. People still talking about effective communication. I mean, I think you're really hitting on so many things. We have a parent engagement specialist on here. Her name is Miss Colbert.
Yes,
She does an excellent job, and she really is committed to supporting parents. And so, as you were talking, she says this is so true. It's going to take some time. So, with that statement, I want you to talk to the parents. What do parents need to know? And I'm going to do another episode as this continues, specifically for parents. But parents are concerned about retention, they're concerned about learning loss. They're concerned what the school look like next year. So, what is it that you feel like parents need to know, and what do you want to share with parents about their child's education, learning in schools as we look forward?
with parents, the first thing I want to say is don't beat yourself up. That's critical. Look at where your children are right now. I would say meet with the current teachers to say, okay, what are the next steps? Because you want someone else to give you feedback. I know that they may send those homework grades still, classwork, the assessments, but you need to know, what do we really need to be working on this
Yeah,
summer? I mean, because you can start working on all kind of stuff, but what are those one or two things you need to work on during the summer? And then if your district is having some kind of summer program, I would encourage you to let your child go to the summer program as well, and then stay in touch with those teachers. And then if your school, after summer school is over, that your child is assigned to, if they're doing something like this year at Applin, we've decided to do a pre-work camp, just a preview for the upcoming year, because
yeah,
students in our district will be going to summer school. And so we support summer school in our district because all middle school students will be going to one area. But what we're going to offer the parents is a pre. And so we'll have some time for sixth grade to come, seventh and eighth. And what we're going to do, we're going to make it fun,
mhm,
because children need fun right now, too. So we can't lose sight that learning is supposed to be fun. And when learning stops being fun, so, as a parent, do something fun with learning this summer. Don't do anything that's always just so stressful. Still do something fun. And know that
yeah,
learning loss is not going to end overnight. You got to be patient. And I'm speaking to myself as well. You got to be patient with yourself and your child. Again, contact the school to say, hey, I know we've done all this year, but what should he be working on for next year? And then
yeah,
if they say, well, you know what? Let's talk to the seventh grade teacher if he's going to seventh grade. This is what I would recommend for sixth. But let's talk to the upcoming seventh grade teacher. What would you recommend that we work on? Just one or two things. That's it.
mhm,
Because you can't do everything. And then whatever it is you're doing, make it fun. If you decide this summer we're working and we're gonna read a chapter book together,
yeah,
don't go pick out 3, 4 chapter books. Please. Just say, hey, well, let's look at what you like.
yeah,
To go out and buy this expensive book. They have books at the nearby library. They'll let you keep rechecking and rechecking. But have a book that your child wants to read. And then if you say, okay, my child's a little behind in reading, then find a book of interest on their level. You buy the book, you get the book too, and then read and just make it fun.
yeah.
Try not to make it so schoolwork.
I
But
know, right?
yeah, try to have some fun because the COVID period has taken the fun out of learning. And so even as I'm interacting with our students who opted to come back face to face, while we're trying to get back, it's still they're just working at school because they can't go eat in the lunchroom.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things we used to do, the fun stuff is just, of course, we're gonna continue to follow the COVID guidelines, but
Mhm.
like Deborah Denard just said, let's not forget the whole child.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, shouts out to Miss Denard because she's right about that. It's like this COVID period, we're forgetting that school and life is fun.
Yeah.
When you go to work, and as a principal, I still love being a principal. And my staff know that, students, even parents that I talk to, and so we got to permeate that to children, even as a parent,
Yeah.
that we still gonna have a little fun while we're doing this now.
Yeah. I
So,
love it. I
yeah, so
love
just those kind of things, and just be real with yourself.
it. Hmm.
That this is where we are. We're gonna do this much work, and we're gonna keep on working. It's almost like going on a diet or cutting back. You can't lose 100 pounds overnight.
Right.
And learning loss is just like that. We're not able to clear it overnight, but we got to have a plan for it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because if
Hmm.
you don't have a plan, then plan to fail.
Yeah. When I think about learning loss, it's the opposite of losing weight. You can't gain 100 pounds overnight.
Right.
You got to take time and incrementally increase your amount of intake to gain that weight. And so right now, our kids are a little bit, they're academically anorexic, let's say that. And so we've got to help them put on some weight. And that's going to take a strategic plan, but it has to be fun. And so Ms. Jackson says, uh, based on what you said, I need grace every day. She says she needs some grace every day.
Oh, thank you,
And
Miss Jackson. Miss
there,
Jackson, we grant you grace.
and there are so many parents out there that feel the same way. That each day is a new struggle. Just not that the child may not be engaged, but no, their role in helping,
It's hard.
and and they find themselves being agitated because of their lack of ability to support and not knowing what's really going on. Um, Dr. Lonnie says, if you need some help, parents, especially if you're in the Texas area, Huntington Learning Center can help you. If you're in the Woodlands, Texas area, reach out to Huntington Learning Center and see what they can do to support you and supporting your children to close those gaps. There are a lot of supports out there, and we want to make sure that students get what they need and parents get what they need. We got a new viewer on here. Miss Hurley says, learning should be fun. Enrich students by allowing them to learn about things they are not interested in. Let me go back and say that again. Enrich their learning by allowing them to learn about things they aren't interested in typically. But you can pull them in and make it relevant and make those connections. They can get new learning from new experiences.
Mhm.
And so I want to end talking about where are we going in the future in education? Where do you see this going? And talk about how the pandemic has really had some positive outcomes as well. I know there are a lot of emotional and social and financial loss that we've experienced, including the learning loss we just talked about. But what do you see being the positive side of the pandemic for schools and education? And then where do you see it going?
Um, During this COVID time period, I think that our students have built up resiliency. I know in the students that I interact with at school, um, they have they are able to change in an instant now. And I think that's a good thing because change is really hard. And so students are showing that they can change, and it's like it's just naturally happening for them. Now, in the future, I see it being a blended learning experience for students. I
Mhm.
really do. I do think that there will be a core group of students that may opt to be virtual because we've had a lot of students who have been very active in virtual learning. But then there may be some students that need blended, where some of their work will be face to face, some will be virtual, and then you'll have those students who still want that traditional model. And so I think that we're going to end up having some teachers who are just doing virtual. I think it's going to lend itself to that in public education. I really do. I think that we're going to have to continue to be resourceful with our resources, because we've learned how not to use paper now.
Right.
So, and so there are a lot of digital tools that teachers are using, and that students can fill out their instructional tasks right in that platform. I think about our smart notebook that some of our teachers use, and so just it's going to really birth students being extremely technology savvy,
Hmm.
along with teachers as well, because I see teachers that they share resources with each other. They share a lot of different resources that maybe their colleagues didn't know about, and so I think it's going to promote greater collaboration.
Yeah.
Greater collaboration in terms of not just creating lesson plans, but how are we using our resources to really engage with students.
Hmm.
And so, because we've had to really put a lot of intentional thought in student engagement. And so, I think it's going to birth a new way of student engagement. And students they like being on technology.
They love it. They
I
love
mean,
it.
and so it's not like we've had students just doing inappropriate things. They really enjoy going to the module and clicking on their assignments and checking in. And so
Hmm.
I think it's really creating that college career ready mindset. So I think COVID has birthed a greater way of thinking. And it's hard to have a fixed mindset
Yeah.
with COVID. So it's really helped a lot of educators and parents and even students have a growth mindset.
Yeah. I really think of you mentioned the word college and career ready. And I think the focus had always been on having students think um, from a college and career ready frame. But what we've done now is have them perform from a college and career ready perspective. Because even if we have kids that can think but can't handle the skills needed to be successful in college, this has done this. And so it has really stretched us in education, taking a lot of us out of our comfort zone. And I would like to make the comparison of since the pandemic, it has placed us in the tomb.
Hmm.
And although while we sat there and we rested and we couldn't perform like we normally perform and we couldn't do, as we would say, the miracles with our students, we're still sitting in the tomb, waiting but still working and thinking about how we're going to come out. And so this school year coming up, the stone will be rolled away and we're going to come out resurrected with more power than we had when we went in to perform more miracles and do greater works for students in
Amen.
these schools across this country. And
Amen.
so sometimes you got to be, as my grandma said, sometimes you got to be sat down so you can come back better. And so the pandemic did that for us because many of us would not have been one-to-one had it not been for a pandemic because we didn't trust the kids. We didn't trust the community. But when the pandemic hit, you didn't have a choice. You had to put the device in their hands and trust the work would still continue.
Right.
And so, as you said, I think there's going to be a greater shift. There's going to be a greater diversity. There's going to be a greater appreciation for students and teachers moving forward. I am excited about it. I understand the challenge that we are facing moving forward, but there is definitely a need that has been fulfilled, that has fallen on the earth and forced us to lift our hands and surrender and do the work that we know we need to do, but we're afraid to do it. Dr. Kuhn says, Dr. Griffin-Stewart, authentic collaboration among teachers and student ownership are all at an all-time high.
Absolutely.
And we can't forget that. We can't forget that. And so for those leaders that are watching, I know that somebody took something away from this episode today. I thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for getting in the comments. Thank you for getting in the chats. Thank you for offering your questions and your comments and your feedback. Once again, it helps drive the conversation. For those of you that shared this with somebody, thank you. We had almost, I don't know how many views we had all together between all four platforms, but this will probably be one of my most highest viewed shows. Why? This lady right here. Magic, y'all. Magic. I'm so excited that she was able to share. And she took a day away from her spring break to do this with me this evening. So thank you so much, Dr. Griffin-Stewart.
Thank you, Dr.
This has been just awesome, and I appreciate you. You know, I respect you and I love you so much. If you want to find her, just look her up, Appling Middle School, Bibb County School District, and she'll be right there. Her contact information is there. You want to reach out to her. If you have comments, questions, you have some things you need clarity as a leader, you want to find out how she's doing certain things. She welcomes, look, I'm speaking for her. She welcomes the communication. Mr. Triplett says, thank you for your knowledge, Dr. Griffin-Stewart. This is an elementary principal that said this. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. This has truly been a pleasure. This is Teacher Talk. If you haven't watched before, let me remind you how you're going to watch again. I'm on every Thursday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm on Facebook Live, YouTube Live. I'm on Periscope, and I'm also now on LinkedIn Live. So there is no excuse why you cannot watch this series. Remember, we're laughing, we're learning, and we're loving. But the ultimate goal is to ensure that every child in this country has access to a high-quality education despite race, gender, culture, socioeconomic class. It doesn't matter. Every student deserves it. And that's what I'm here advocating for every Thursday, but in a very lighthearted and informative way. So again, thank you for watching. We enjoyed you tonight. And until next Thursday, as I always say, be safe and stay blessed. Good night, guys.
Good night.